Weekly Union Update. It's Monday. It's June 29th. I'm your host and chapter president, Jana Blunt. Our news this week includes some reminders and updates, our latest negotiation news, and information on upcoming events. Before we begin, let's see if you know the answer to our first pop quiz question, which is, what is a reclass? There are only hours left to submit your staff development and wellness reimbursement. You've got until the end of Tuesday this week to purchase. All receipts must be dated from last July all the way up until this Tuesday at the very latest. So you cannot purchase beyond this Tuesday for this fiscal year that is ending. FYI, if you haven't already heard, my department's payroll folks received notification last week that if you are teleworking, you may now use your staff development and wellness benefit for items such as desks, sit-stand desks, and office or desk chairs. So if you still have funds available for this fiscal year, which ends this Tuesday, on the 30th of June, and if you've purchased or plan to purchase by the end of Tuesday any of these items, you may now submit the receipts for reimbursement. So again, these are desks, including sit-stand desks or any kind of office desk chair. And that's only if you are teleworking. HR is working on a formal expansion to add these items, but in the meantime, when you are submitting, you will have to choose the category computer. So when you're choosing the category, HR wants you to choose the computer category. And as a reminder, all staff development, health and wellness benefit purchases for this fiscal year must be purchased no later than Tuesday, June 30th. Once they've been purchased, please submit your receipts for reimbursement ASAP. They cannot accept them beyond July 8th. So say you need to reach out to the union. Depending on your scenario, do you know who to contact with your inquiry? One way to make it easier is when it comes to our contacts and the people who are available to us, we can kind of break them into 4 categories. The first group would be our pair of union reps, Diego and Michael. These guys are employed by SEIU. They've got years of training and experience under their belts and all sorts of stuff that none of the rest of us do. Our second group, by far the largest, consists of our union stewards and other worksite leaders. Many worksites have shop stewards, and all worksites have at least a few knowledgeable or helpful folks who can at the very least act as an intermediary, to ensure that you're being shuttled through to someone who can help. Stewards and member leaders they reflect the rest of our bargaining unit at large. They represent us accurately. It means essentially their interests and their strengths, they vary widely. So we've got some stewards who are just irreplaceable during grievances or disciplinary meetings, while others are just full-on activists, champions of the community at large, and they represent us well. Some stewards can recite the MOU verbatim, while others are just expert negotiators. All of them are cuddled under the wing of our chief steward, Debbie Steen, the big boss steward, the final boss. She holds regular meetings with this crew. With time, I'd love to help you get to know all of our stewards, just so you can see how large and helpful our leadership team is. You've got more support than you know, and it's my job to tell you. So I will do that. Our third group consists of your elected chapter leadership. So we're all just a bunch of stewards, but we also sit in elected chairs, and those chairs include president, vice president, chief steward, the final boss, treasurer/secretary, COPE representative, and remember COPE from the last video was the Council on Political Education. And then we also have County Industry Council representative and an at-large representative. Again, naturally, we're also shop stewards. It's just that our elected positions require that we take on other miscellaneous roles and jobs at times. So, for example, we have an elected officer right now who's both on the SCARE retirement board, which is quite a job, And they are also on the local 10-to-1's overall overarching executive board that is overseeing the entire local, which is all of Northern California. So admittedly, we are a busy group by default. So again, number 3 here, we are just an extension of number 2, a small representative group of the shop stewards. But 4th on our list of contacts is SEIU's Member Resource Center. Do not forget that you have them at your disposal. They are available from 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. And as you can see here, they can help you with a lot. So we've got 4 categories. We got our field reps in number 1 there. Then we got our stewards, worksite leaders, that's number 2. We've got our chapter officers, number 3. And then we have SEIU's Member Resource Center, which is number 4. But I want to point out a crucial difference between our field reps, number 1, and our other union leadership. Our field reps are special because they are actually employed by the SEIU, right? So the rest of us, again, we're no different than you. We're county employees. Our union involvement is unpaid, it's voluntary. We do it because it's something we're passionate about. The only downside about that is that we can't spend all of our time on it because we have our own pesky jobs to deal with. So why am I pointing out this obvious and boring distinction? Basically, if you need help ASAP, and if it cannot wait and you don't have someone available nearby who's able to help, you'd probably better text or call or email your field rep or the Member Resource Center and not wait. Again, it is great if you've got a steward or a leader nearby, but in the case that they're not available or in case it just needs to be escalated, maybe it pertains to job security or worksite safety, do not hesitate to reach out to SEIU proper. Bear with me on this horrific looking chart. It'll make sense in a moment. If your inquiry is not urgent, either when it comes to turnaround time or subject matter, see if you can bypass your field reps. This will allow Michael and Diego to focus on what they're trained to handle. They spend a lot of time in meetings and they spend a lot of time handling the big ugly stuff. They're here for all of us all the time. Don't ever be afraid to reach out to them. But hypothetically speaking, if we allow them to handle the really gross stuff primarily, we are taking those heavier loads off the backs of the stewards and the member leaders. And that allows the rest of us to handle a larger volume of your outreach. I hope that makes sense. And again, if the person, regardless, if you've reached out to someone and they haven't been able to return your communication as quickly as you'd like or as quickly as you'd need, just try someone else or try the MRC, the Member Resource Center. We all get backed up sometimes. That doesn't mean that you have to wait. It's just good for all of us to remember that we do have multiple sources to tap and that some of these resources are specialized to deal with emergencies, while other sources are better taking on procedural everyday questions. So the category here, as you can see, is twofold. We've got severity and we've got timeline. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have, if not most of our stewards, able to at the very least partially handle really big problems. That's what we're here to do. But the people who are best at that, if they can be let off the hook for the smaller stuff that the rest of us can handle, your best bet's always going to be Michael or Diego if it's an emergency. But that doesn't mean you're going to be able to get a hold of them, so they're not the only folks there. You've always got somebody. What you will see in this horrible chart is in the no rush vertical column, you don't see any union field reps there. You don't see Michael or Diego in those cases, because if it's not a rush, they typically work in the now. So just reach out to a steward, a leader, an officer, or again, as always, the Member Resource Center, if it's between 8 and 6. You don't see the union field reps until the second 2 columns on the right-hand side there. You definitely see the union field reps in the ASAP emergencies on the bottom right, but you don't see county employee union leadership. That doesn't mean they can't help, but again, this is more of a priority listing. Everybody's situation is different. You might have a very close relationship or a friendship with a steward where you guys you work really well together, or you just happen to know that they're really skilled in a certain area. There's no hard and fast rule here. This is just a suggestion. And it might help things move a little more smoothly for everyone. All right. So I harped on this a few weeks back, but several stewards rightly recommended that I bring it back up. So thanks to those of you who did. If you are at an increased risk of complications due to a pre-existing health condition or another reason, or if you're unable to wear a facial covering for health reasons, or if you have any health-related reason contributing to difficulty reporting to your worksite, and you haven't already gotten a doctor's note, please don't wait any longer. Reach out to your primary physician immediately and get that note. We're dealing with a lot of unknowns right now. I know I don't have to tell you that, but we're dealing with lobbies reopening. We're dealing with fewer people in the public tending to comply with the health order. I don't know if you're seeing it, but there's more and more people refusing to wear masks. Cases are multiplying locally faster than ever. So if you qualify for a note, get it while you can. I'm not saying that this option is going to go away, but just realize that other people are doing it too. And we're unsure how things are going to pan out politically. This is unprecedented. We don't know how things are going to pan out politically once doctor-required telework hits critical mass. There's just no telling. If you work at HSD, you should already know that your department has already fashioned and provided their own form, their own doctor's note template for you to provide to your physician. So if you're not an HSD, ignore this next slide. But if you are an HSD, however you feel about it, there's nothing about this letter that asks for more information from your doctor than a generic doctor's standard note would provide. Now, it is certainly silly to provide a list of conditions as an example at the top, as if any doctor who needs help with this type of thing probably needs their medical license revoked. It's just weird. Rest assured, there's no legal basis for us to be concerned or to take any actions against this decision. It's not a hill that any of us need to die on. There's plenty of other ones. Think about it this way. Think about this upside, right? Handing over HSD's own note back to them after you've gotten a doctor to sign it is going to prevent HSD from being able to tell you that what your doctor gave you is illegitimate or it's in the wrong format. Now, again, if you don't work at HSD, ignore all that and just get regular old doctor's note. For the cajillionth time, just please don't forget that if you haven't already checked it out, you've got many resources available in our shared Google Drive. They're always going to be there, and it's only getting larger in resource, so it's always there. Eventually, I'd like to turn this whole thing into a giant library, like an encyclopedia. One thing to have a lot of dreams. We'll see if these pan out. They'd better. Pop quiz question number 2. How can you get HR to examine your salary during a reclass? Negotiation update, let's do this. We've gotten the county's response on our latest proposals for the vacation accrual cap lift and frontline compensation proposal. We just submitted an updated teleworking proposal to the county, and we are in the middle of deciding how to respond to the county's side letter regarding extended qualifying usage of sick leave for the remainder of 2020. More on that in a bit. The county had this to say as a response to both our vacation accrual lift proposal and our frontline compensation proposal, as in this exact thing to say twice, an identical response to both proposals. Essentially what they're saying here is that they don't agree to either one. They appreciate our interest in recognizing you. And here are the things that they've already done for us. Disaster paid for all regular staff who couldn't meet their full-time equivalency from March to June. The same leave for extra help staff unable to work their regular assignments from March to April. Provided all employees with that additional nearly 81 hours of sick leave time, and they made sure to say that that's an equivalent to almost 1 year of accruals. They didn't exempt special staff and first responder job classes from EFMLEA. A handful of job classes wouldn't have been able to get that extra parental leave. I'm not even entirely sure if anybody in our bargaining unit would have been, well, certain social workers would have been affected. So, I mean, again, that's something. The county didn't enforce the daily cap on salary underneath those benefits. So keep that in mind. Those things did happen. Nobody can deny it. But our best data at this moment has about 50 SEIU members sitting on their cap and no longer accruing. About half of them are supervisors. Now, that is not representative of the rest of the membership. Half of us are not supervisors. Okay, so that's a common thread. Keep that in mind. After spending the past few months chasing down each of these people to see what's going on, I have learned that the overarching issue is related to work ethic and their workload. Big surprise, right? These folks are just in positions where it's difficult for them to just take off time right now. And those reasons are obvious. Now, have these folks been given the explicit order from their higher ups telling them that they've been banned from going on vacation? Certainly not in writing, but that's what really counts. So tell me, should it be hard for HR to understand that we are encountering circumstances, much like our fires and our floods and our outages, that have 2% of our bargaining unit in situations where they've just got to hold it down for the rest of us until things chill? Should that be hard to understand? Just asking questions. We tore down and rebuilt our proposal demanding telework extension and expansion. This is our central focus right now for obvious reasons. Our pandemic is getting worse, while the county continues to increase employee presence at each worksite, with the added fun factor of reopening most customer lobbies next week. It's unreal, I know, but try to keep yourself in check. We've gotten this far. Do not forget that we are going to be faced with even more reasons to pace ourselves emotionally. We are entering fire season, which means we're entering power outage season. Oh, I cannot wait. There's no telling if or when we're going to need to just close everything back up when the pandemic continues to pick up speed. We don't know. We've just got to get through this one day at a time. All right. The county submitted a side letter. You could consider a side letter kind of a proposed addendum to our MOU. They submitted this side letter to the union for our approval now that they've discontinued the disaster paid not worked leave. So don't forget that the purpose of that disaster pay was for folks whose work site was closed, they had no way to telework, and they weren't assigned elsewhere, so they qualified for that leave. So now that the county has discontinued that leave, the purpose of this side letter is to expand the qualifying use of our generic sick time for those same situations that once qualified us for disaster pay. So again, if our work site closes and we have no way to telework or we don't have an assignment elsewhere, we would now be allowed, if we signed this and agreed to it, we would be allowed to use our sick time now that disaster pay is off the table. Now, underneath the obvious fact that this is overtly problematic, I will absolutely acknowledge that us gaining additional qualified reasons to use any of our own generic accruals technically is a net win for our members, at least on the face of it. But this side letter requires us to agree that the county will not reauthorize disaster pay in the future. That's cute. And check out this duration on the upper left in the red and yellow. The duration is for, quote, the COVID-19 public health emergency. The emergency. What does that mean? COVID-19 from here on out? Just the first wave? If just the first wave, what really constitutes a wave? Is that like a scientific thing? Are there numbers to that? Are they talking about specific public health order durations? Are they talking about the emergency proclamations of the county or state or federally? What does it mean? When I asked the county last Thursday, the county didn't know. So they're looking into it and they'll get back to us, which means I'll have to get back to you when I learn. Now, the second part of this side letter includes an option for parents to use their generic accrued sick leave if they need to stay home with their kids without the option of telework. Up until the end of the year, parents in this situation, don't forget, should use up all available federal CARES Act leaves. That includes those 80 hours of emergency paid sick leave that'll expire, and then those 10 weeks of the partial paid family leave. Those two types of leaves are special and they expire at the end of the year, so parents should not touch their own personal generic accruals until those special leaves are fully drained. But, another but. Our concern is that this side letter stipulates that this expanded sick leave usage option, not the accrued sick leave in and of itself, we get to keep that, but the option to use this generic sick leave for that special reason also expires at the end of the year. So what about after that? As before, the conversation will continue and we'll keep it posted. And all of this, how the county is responding to our proposals over months of deliberation, how they're responding, the fact that more of us are required to return to our work sites each week, the fact that we're reopening customer lobbies next week, right as our local coronavirus cases are truly beginning to spike, the fact that our protestations seem to be falling upon deaf ears, all of this has led us to our first planned action. We're going to be pulling the Board of Supervisors into this full scale with each member's help. That means you too. An official 10-to-1 email is going to go out this week with talking points, and I'm going to start popping these talking points up right now. An official 10-to-1 email is going to go out this week with talking points, instructions, contact information for each of the county supervisors. It's going to be very easy for each of us to do, and it's only going to take us a few clicks. Involving the Board of Supervisors is important because by nature they're detached from what's going on with us at the front line, but they have a lot of sway with what HR decides. There are drawbacks to contacting them too soon in a scenario like this, but we're well now within the window where it'll be useful for us. So it's our hope that hitting them with many individual messages from our members is going to assist us in our progress toward our ultimate goal of a long-term, comprehensive telework policy that ensures continued high-quality services to the public with an obviously increased level of safety for all of us. Now, it's not just you who can email the soups, your spouse, your kids, your parents, your friends. Let's get all of us up in this and just drown their inboxes with legitimate messages. This is not just for fun. This is not us just being a pain in the butt. This is a real deal. Now pause the video if you must to scan all of these talking points so you can tell me what's missing. And if you have additional ideas, please send them to me either at my email, as always, jannablunt, SEIU, @gmail.com, or you can text them to me at 707-849-3752, or you can just find me in the Outlook directory if you can't remember that stuff. I want to thank all of the shop stewards who helped contribute to this list last week of talking points. A lot of people were involved in this, and again, just another reason why I want you to get to know these people. Keep an eye out for this email later this week. All right, question 3 of 3. How do you qualify for a reclass? But first, check out our calendar of events. If you work at HSD Pollen, this Tuesday, June 30th, you're having a worksite meeting at lunch from noon to 12:30. When we say worksite meetings or any kind of meetings, know that we're talking about online Zoom meetings. Just put it out there. This will be hosted by our dear chief and final boss, Steward Debbie Steen. I'm hosting a special 2-hour adult and aging worksite meeting this Wednesday, July 1st, from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. If you work at adult and aging in any of the locations, please join on. If you haven't already received the Zoom information for that, reach out to me, but all of you should have received it by now. Our weekly steward meeting series continues this Wednesday from 11 to 12, also hosted by Chief Chief Steward, Deputy Steen. Debbie, I was calling her a Chief Deputy, and now I call her Deputy Steen. This is getting good. Also hosted by Chief Steward Debbie Steen. There we go. As I just mentioned, an email will be coming soon for instructions on our email campaign to the Board of Soups. We are also going to be sending out in the next week or two a state disability insurance survey. More on that in time and why we're doing that. Next Monday, July 6th, everyone's invited to my countywide Worksite meeting. It's a lunchtime meeting. It's going to go out via invitation with an official 10-to-1 email. The invitation info is already on our Facebook page. So if you're not on Facebook, keep an eye out for the official 10-to-1 email for the Zoom info. You can always email me too or text me if you don't have it, you want me to forward it to you. And as a continuation of that, my countywide worksite lunches are going to turn into a Wednesday series starting the following week. So on Wednesday, July 15th, that'll be the first one, and then each following Wednesday, to be determined as to how long we're going to keep doing that. An event for each of those has been scheduled in our Facebook group in advance through the end of September, and we will send out weekly email reminders for these. So please join me at lunch, even if it's just to listen. Participation is going to be entirely up to you. There's even going to be built-in confidential polls in the Zoom screen that you'll be able to take. I'll be bringing various other leaders in upcoming weeks in and out of the meeting to provide information based on their specialties and their pet projects. So it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. All right, baby, let's get to these pop quiz answers. What is a reclass? Well, when most of us use the term reclass, it's a shortened version of something we're referring to called a classification study. And there are 3 types of classification study. The first kind is when you're reclassifying an individual or a small group of folks to an existing classification that already exists. The second kind of reclass is when you're updating a specification. And then the last type of reclass is when you create a brand new classification that never existed before. This is a unique scenario, and it's special for one reason that you're about to learn. But how can you get human resources to examine or analyze, look at your actual salary during a reclass? Sit down. Believe it or not, only the third type of reclass. Only when a brand new classification is being created will HR do a compensation analysis. Take it easy, I'm going to get you through it. Otherwise, the only time that human resources actually sits down and conducts an examination of our actual wages, the only time that they schedule time to do that and agree to do that is right in advance of our intermittent contract negotiations. For obvious reasons, that's something they have to do then. So however long our contract is, right before the upcoming contract negotiation times, when we go to the table, the county will conduct a countywide total comp survey on all of the benchmark classifications. And that has a trickle-down effect to the other classifications that are tied to each of those benchmarks. So here is HR's philosophy on this. Don't shoot the messenger, but I'm telling you what they tell us. Here's HR's philosophy. In classification type 1, remember, you are reclassifying an individual or a group of individuals from one classification to another that already exists, right? So, for example, a group of legal processor 2s in a department decide that their job responsibilities are actually those of senior office assistants, for example. So, to HR, these folks are going from job A to job B, job A to existing job B. In this process, no changes are occurring to job B's classification. Senior office assistants aren't under the microscope, and their base salary doesn't need to be analyzed to HR. Essentially, what's happening at HR is that they've been tasked with sitting down and asking those legal processors' job responsibilities. Should that classification be legal processor, or should they be senior office assistant? Or even, is this team of folks more closely performing the job in some other classification, like office support supervisor? Regardless of which ship those legal processor twos jump to, HR is not conducting any analysis of their destination to determine whether or not that job class is being compensated appropriately. All they're doing is seeing whether or not, in this case, those legal processor twos are performing the job of a legal processor two or not. And if they're not, find one that's more accurate. In HR's philosophy of classification type 2, the job responsibilities of an existing job class need to be updated. Maybe technology has made some of the duties obsolete, or it might require the addition of some duties. For an example would be park aides. Park aides who, once park passes become electronic, the park aides are going to be required to be able to process those electronic parks passes when money's being taken at the parks parking lots. They'll be required to do that instead of paper tags or tags that are hanging in the mirror. So that's an example of that. The existing job class itself, the people aren't changing from one to another, but the duties themselves need to be updated. Lastly, for classification type 3, when a brand new job class is being created, HR has no choice but to look closely at the salary, because this brand new job class doesn't yet have a salary. So they've got to look at it to see if it's going to be right or wrong. So an example of that, and it's a unique one, when this happens, it's typically because, and to my knowledge, it's only ever been because department management has reached out to HR and said, there's a need to do this. We need to create a brand new thing. And there's a reason that benefits the department. It's not just, hey, I don't feel like these people are getting paid right, or I don't think that these people's job responsibilities are accurate. It's, hey, our department needs this and this is why. I work at the clerk recorder assessor, and long before I even came on in 2014, it had been at least a year prior to that, they were already moving well into their process for a reclass, in this case, creating a brand new classification. They'd already gone through their time study, and what they were doing is they were taking 4 groups. They were taking the clerks, and they were legal processors. They were taking the recorders, at the time called document recorders. They were taking, I believe they were called assessment aides or assessment assistants. And then they were also taking the micrographics technicians. All 4 of those groups, they were going to throw under a brand new job spec called CRA, or Clerk Recorder Assessor Specialist class. Specialist 1 and 2, and I think senior specialist, as well as specialist or CRA supervisor, something along those lines. I should know this, so I'm tired. It took over 5 years. And this was there was no argument really in this. This was literally just management going, hey, we need to do this because, future budgets are going to require that it'll need to be easier for us to be able to move these people around if necessary. If one division, experiences a huge budget cut, or some change occurs that it requires a lot more work of this division, and we're going to need to be able to move people back and forth with less red tape. It needs to be easier to do. So that's why they did it. It was to benefit the department. And in that case, the salaries had to be assigned. So they did look at the compensation, but this was not asked for by the actual employees. This was for management. And even in a good-natured scenario, this took over a half a decade to do. All right. So how would you qualify for a reclass? How would you qualify for a classification study in any of the prior circumstances? If your body of work more closely resembles that of a different job classification, or if your job class needs a makeover because the listed responsibilities are no longer accurate, or because an entirely new job classification needs to be made from scratch. Now, if you weren't already aware of this information and are feeling disappointed, you are not alone. I've been there. I know how you feel. There are countless members throughout the county hanging on to the hope of getting a much-deserved raise, and I'm saying much-deserved. I'm saying that. I'm not saying that because they feel that. They're hoping to get a much-deserved raise through a quote-unquote reclass. But just remember, while it's important that you're not mistaken over how class studies work, we shouldn't have false hopes. Don't let this knowledge get you down. We are rarely in a position where we have zero options at our disposal, okay? Remember that. As time goes on, I'm going to be doing a video that focuses entirely on classification studies, something that elaborates more on this, when it works out for people, when it doesn't, and everything else in between. Everything there is to know about that god-awful years-long process that is a reclass. As always, you can subscribe to this channel and even activate new video notifications if you don't want to miss our updates. Other resources still available to you are my direct email updates, our private Facebook group, and our shared Google Drive for the millionth time. Links for each of these are always in the video description. Once again, please attend one of my upcoming countywide Worksite Zoom meetings and keep your eyes peeled for emails from me, both directly and through local 10-to-1. If you have teammates who aren't already clued into these updates, please feel free to share the love. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for your patience as we slowly continue to build our union's collective power. Thanks for your patience as we slowly continue to build our internal support over the past weeks and months during my time as president. Like the other best things in life, this won't come to us overnight, and it hasn't. But as always, my boy Lando here has got it right. As more and more of us throw our hats into the ring, the individual effort that each of us needs to exert decreases. I'm starting to see it happen. It's wonderful. And the number of you who are earning serious shout outs is continuing to grow. So keep it up, and I'll see you all soon.